Hey guys, it's Friday on the TED Show. I'm Ted Bogert. Very much excited. Today's Friday. I love Fridays. I love all days, but I love Fridays, and I love it when we are launching a new series on the TED Show. This one is called American Stories, and I have to give almost all of the credit, pretty much, for everything to Sal Picataggio.
Hey.
So I had to go right to the New York craziness. I don't know how that came in. But Sal's on. He's amazing. He's an attorney, immigration. He came on the show and was just such a joy to have on. I thought, well, we can tell some great stories. And so here we are. So welcome, Sal. And then our featured immigrant entrepreneur of the day, of the week, is none other than Steve Silcock with Bardell Real Estate. What's up, Steve? How you doing?
Hey, how you going, Ted?
Good, good, good. All right, so let's do origin story a little bit. We'll start with the co-host, Sal, and then he can take it from there. Tell us a little bit about you, Sal, and what you do and your story.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks for having me back on. It really was awesome getting to do this. Was it, what, 20 years ago? No, it was like a month ago. It feels like longer. And yeah, it's awesome to put this together. So yeah, I'm Sal Picataggio, and I am an immigration attorney with Colombo and Hurd in downtown Orlando, Florida. Except for right now, I'm in my dining room in Lake Mary, Florida. And I've been doing immigration since 2011. I joined Colombo and Hurd just back in December, and I've always focused on primarily business immigration for entrepreneurs, business owners, employers and employees, foreign nationals with special abilities or unique skills that could pursue immigration that way. And I've been kind of part of the real estate and various international communities ever since. And yeah, the idea was here to tell some individual stories. I think people see immigration as this blob of issues and myths and confusion, and there's people behind all these stories. There's individual people telling stories who are contributing to our communities, contributing to this country. So we wanted to highlight some of them right in our backyard. And one of the first people I thought of was Steve. He and I have shared some presentation opportunities recently, and he was one of the first I thought of to come and tell his story. So thank you, Ted, for putting this all together, and Steve for being our very first guest on American Stories. This is very cool. It's very cool to get this done.
The very first guest. You must feel like a guinea pig, Steve. Steve, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's good to be first.
Everything will be fine.
It's definitely good to be first. All right. So obviously we want to know about your story. We want to know, just give us your origin story, and we'll ask questions. I'm sure the attorney here will have no problem finding questions or thinking of questions to ask you. But yeah, take it away, Steve.
Cool. I guess my Florida story goes back to 2001, and it was in pretty challenging circumstances back then, because we were due to fly out on 9/13 to come and view a vacation home here close to Disney. Needless to say, we didn't fly on 9/13 after 9/11. So it's a little strange at the moment. We're doing this as a first and my origin, and we're dealing with the pandemic at the same time. But the one thing that it does show you is things move forward. Things get better, things move on. And we're going to get through all of this just as we did after 9/11. So that was kind of our introduction to Florida, and we did move forward. We ended up buying a vacation home without ever seeing it. We'd never been to the US, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. So, we went ahead and bought it, and then came out at Christmas to see what did we buy. And we obviously liked Florida. I mean, we just fell in love with the place, and literally 4 years after first setting foot off a plane in Orlando International, we emigrated. So it was
I'm always curious about when someone decides I'm going to immigrate. What's the final impetus? Is it just a buildup, or was it all right? That's the land of opportunity. You saw the Statue of Liberty, and of course, you came to Florida. You probably didn't, but you're motivated. Like, what is the impetus behind that final decision to immigrate?
Oh, my tipping point was a very clear one. I'd spent over 20 years in banking insurance in the UK. It was all on account management, business development, and on the IT side of it. lots of hotels, lots of traveling. And a little girl came along. And it was a case of, do I want to spend my time traveling and moving around or be at home? And that really was that final tipping point for me. And what I could see in Florida was that ability to build a new life, spend that time at home with family. And that really was that final point. Although that little baby girl is now a 16-year-old teenager.
Life changes, doesn't it, my friend?
Oh, boy, does it change.
It's like they bring a whole new baby girl into. You're like, who is this human being? Yes,
Oh,
been
man.
there, done that.
It is, but that was that real tipping point, and the opportunity to almost, if you like, start a new life and a new way of working. And the weather's just a little bit of a bonus.
Yeah, a big bonus, right?
Yeah.
Sal, I have to ask you, based on what Steve is sharing, what's that process like? Like, it's one thing to say, I want to come over here, I want to immigrate, and then it's not like 90 Day Fiance, or it's not, well, I guess maybe it is. Thank God on some level. But it's not this easy, I've made the decision, I'm coming to America. Can you give them kind of a little bit about that?
Sure. Now, the process Steve ended up going with was the E2 visa, the treaty investor. And that requires an investment, of course, but really the biggest decision is about the business that you are going to operate. Are you going to buy something that's already operating? Are you going to start something from scratch? Are you going to take advantage of a franchise? So deciding that I want to live in the US is part of it. And then it's, well, how are we going to get it done? So when I talk with someone who comes to me that says, all right, I want to move. And I say, well, what do you want to do? Well, what are you planning on doing? And usually they've had that thought of, well, I really want to run a business. I've done it at home. I want to do it here. And someone who is on the list of the countries that allow for E2 visas, the UK being one, then I usually immediately say, cool, let's do the E2 visa. So what kind of business do you want to operate? And it's probably about 50-50 people who want to buy something versus start something from scratch. So we have to first think about what is that business and how could it support this immigration process? It needs to earn enough money to both support the investor. They need to earn enough to make a living off of this investment, but also to support some job creation. There's no set number, but it has to support that job creation. So we are looking at it a little bit from a business side and a little bit with the requirements of the immigration process so that we can kind of live in both worlds. We can keep the business side happy and the immigration side happy, because if the business doesn't work out, the immigration is going to fall as well. So looking into different businesses, and that's kind of my maybe question now back to Steve is, did you first think about doing the E2? Were you thinking about other processes? And then once deciding the E2, how were you thinking from a business side? How did I want to do these two things, the immigration and the business?
Yeah. Well, my background was, was business development. You know, I did an MBA. I looked it up. I did an MBA in 1989. So I think I'm a little older than Sal. It's surprising when you say
Sal.
I am Sal, and I am.
You know, so you've got a range of skills. You know, marketing, customer service, financing. You've got that framework, and these skills are transferable. You learn as you go along. And one of the things that I didn't know at the time, I'd never heard of a business broker. I knew brokers bought and sold homes, but I never heard of a business broker. And that was one of the things that I probably wish I had known about, because it was kind of trying to do things on my own. I'm probably one of the very few business brokers now that have actually, when I talk about E2, I'm not talking about E2. You know, I lived it. You know, I came through that without a business broker, without that guidance. And I got lucky. I mean, that's the only way I can put it. I got lucky. You come across some people and you hear some stories, you know, I bought a business, I'm here now, and there's nothing here. And you're like, well, what did you do for your due diligence? You know, who did all of this work for you? So it was strange. And I walked away from the first business that I looked at purchasing. You know, I just really not comfortable with it. But it was strange because we'd approached Bardell Real Estate to sell the villa that we had. You know, and I was buying something completely different. And the long story short on that is I ended up buying the real estate brokerage that I recruited, you know, took on board to sell my villa. So it's strange how things work out. But I was lucky. and I had the background. At least I could read that balance sheet. I could go through those accounts, But I really wish I'd heard of the concept of a business broker back then.
You know what's funny about business brokers is many of them that I know are from the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's such an opportunity, but I didn't know about business brokers until I met one, and I thought, well, that's interesting. The concept of it was, of course, once somebody explained it to you, but I think if you're ever buying a business and you don't have somebody to represent you, you are missing out, friends. And I'm sure Steve.
They really help. They really help with the immigration process as well. I mean, with a lot of E2s that I've done, I do work very closely with business brokers. Many of them do know the E2 process, especially here in Florida. They know that there's a lot of foreign entrepreneurs who want to buy businesses. So they are familiar with the process. They know the things like Steve mentioned. They looked at one business and, you know what, this doesn't look right. Something doesn't feel right about it. Usually I get concerned when I see the sheet on the sheet and all the numbers, all the revenue and all that's round numbers. They all end in 000. It's like, that's not possible. There's no way. I'll give you the financial documents. Once you close, once you put that, no, I got to review it because I got to know if there's something weird about this business that I'm not going to be able to report the various finances to the consulate. I don't want to pursue that business. I mean, I have to give the consulate a lot of information, as Steve knows as well. It's quite a bit. And of course, it's a lot of information that they try to make you squeeze into 100 pages, as most consulates have now required. Over time, they went from send us whatever you have to you need to email us 100 pages. I guess you can bring in some extra stuff to your interview, but for the most part, squeezing it in all into 100 pages. So Steve, going through the process yourself, now that you've done it, and again, using a business broker would be one pro for sure. What were some things that you wish you would have done if you can go back and do it again? What were some things that, again, you think you got lucky, but what are some things maybe that also you would recommend, even though based on luck, that you would advise others to do based on your experience, or things that, oh man, I wish I would have done it a different way?
Yeah, there are some things that change immediately, as you'll know, Sal. Once you set foot over here, everything changes. One of the big things we come across a lot of people, they want to emigrate, and they just want to come and work here in the US. And the first thing you do is reel them back. Okay, we know what you want to do. Let's work out the best way to do it. If they've already got a property here, then great. If they're coming in without a property, they really need to understand where are they going to live and how are they going to live. Yeah. Because once they get here, they're not going to get a mortgage for 2 years. So if you're thinking of buying a business and emigrating, you might want to consider actually buying a house before you do that next piece, or you're going to need to have that cash available for renting. Because when you get here, big surprise for me, things that we learned, credit score. Credit score is factored into every single piece of your life, even if it doesn't involve you taking credit.
Was that not the same in the UK?
No. Never seen credit. I mean, it just, everything is, factored in. I was getting surprised, car insurance was expensive having just arrived here because you don't know, you've no driving history. Right. So they want the driving history to be able to take it. And like credit, if they don't know your history, then an unknown risk is worse than a bad risk. Absolutely. So you end up paying more. So it was probably all the little things that are the differences of moving from one country to another. And that's where you find that the business broking side of it, it's not just buying and selling that business. It's not just finding that right business. You then, or the way we do it, you then feel personally responsible for the indoctrination into the US of the people coming over. Where do you get your driving license from? How do I get a credit card? I remember my first credit card when I arrived, the limit on it, no credit background, was $50.
Woo! You were a big spender, I bet.
Well, it was like, that's a tank of gas, and then you've maxed out your credit card. So it's like, man, and it's all of these little things. It's the little things that you take for granted. Okay. School systems.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what a GPA was, a sophomore, a freshman. I mean, you know, just being able to hold conversations because people are coming in, they got children. Where are they going to go to school? And when you take for granted the way the school system works, and then you've absolutely no experience of it, you know, it's some of the things that are... Sorry, guys, if you can hear.
That happens, my friend. It's Friday.
I can't claim now to cut my own grass.
I don't know if you guys have noticed me kind of popping mute on and off. My dog is like sitting right over there.
Your
like
dog's losing their minds.
He's going to go with the blower. Sal, you talk for a second.
Shane, well, actually, I've got a question from somebody. Let me read it. It's from Shane. If in the next 12 months we were to gather enough interest, would it be an option for us to pre-set up a property business in the USA? I would probably have to employ someone to take care and run the other parts of the business from the UK.
That's an interesting, yeah, that's actually a really interesting methodology that I've seen people use, and I've used myself, where if you're starting in a business, anything that's been operating, not even just registered, but if it's been operating under a year, so anywhere from pre-operation to actually fully operating, under a year is considered a new business. And one of the requirements of an E2 business application is to show that the business will be financially viable, commercially viable. So I have seen applications, and I've done applications where, yeah, set up, register the business, open it up, install someone in the United States to start operating things. Maybe go a quarter, maybe do 2 quarters of business. Use that information in addition to the years 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 financial projections, which are also required. And then you're showing that, yes, I have these projections, but it's actually based on now 6 months of operating history. I have customers. I have a physical premises. I have everything set up. It's still considered a new business, but now everything's already operating. And that also helps with the requirement of the commitment of funds, because an E2 requires the funds to be committed. The EB5, which is a green card based on investment, that money can be held entirely in escrow until the case is approved. E2, on the other hand, unless you're buying something already existing, if you're starting something from scratch, they want to see that you spent the money. So they want to see the receipts. And if you're actually up and operating, they know that, oh, that money's been spent because they had to have spent it. It's actually doing the thing. It's this weird chicken and egg thing with E2. That one made my feeding back?
Oh, no. We're having a party. You know?
I mean, I started the party, that's for sure, but I don't know where the party is.
We do have the Sunrail tracks running on the outside of our neighborhood, so sometimes we do get to hear the train, and my toddler's always like, train? Huh?
So, Steve, I've got to ask you, it's one thing to get here, have the dream, have somebody amazing to help you out with the process on the immigration side. And then it's another thing to dig in. So did you have contacts here already? Did you already know people here enough to build your business? And if you didn't, how did you build your business? Because I think that's what a lot of business owners would want to know. How did you build it? You didn't have any real centers of influence here, certainly not as many as you had in UK. But I feel like there's a story there. How did you build that up?
It is. I mean, I was fortunate to be in a position where the business that I bought, it was the first real estate brokerage in Four Corners. So it's been there since 1989. So that made it a little easier from my point that I was taking over an existing business. But a lot of that comes into that investment part. You know, if you invest into $100,000 business, you're going to get a business worth $100,000. If you start moving up that scale, then you're going to get more of an established business. And that really does help when you're first coming in. The sphere of influence, you got to network, you know, you've got to get out there. One of the things that I did reasonably quickly was things like the Chamber of Commerce. You know, you've got to start meeting people and start building those relationships, because that's really what gets you. When things are good, business is a lot easier, you know. Now, when things get tough, you know, business gets hard. Yeah. You know, I've always said it, as being self-employed, you know, you're not when you're self-employed, you're working for everybody else. You know, you're the last one in that business that's getting paid quite often. You know, you've really got to dig it in. And when business gets tough, you got to put your head down, So we, as I say, we were fortunate to buy into a good business, and that had the base from what you can develop going forward. But there is no substitute for hard work. You need a little bit of luck, and you got to work hard. You can't come to Florida. The sunshine is really deceiving. One of the things that we try and do for people is, I know I'm going to go and live in Florida. It's sunny every day, and you're not on vacation. This is a 15-year suntan. Just look at it. I've got a tanning bed upstairs. And I have to jump on that before I go back to the UK. Otherwise, nobody believes I live in Florida. You got to work at it. Like any business. And I think once you're here, it's following the same things, whether you're an immigrant visa holder or not. Business is business. You got to work at it. You got to get into those clients.
Sal, are you seeing more people applying now, less? Like, where's the trend at right now of people who want to come over on an E2, right? I said it right. Yeah. With everything going on with COVID, have you seen any big changes in that?
In terms of the interest, it's kind of about the same. People who are willing to pursue this usually come to me already pretty knowledgeable about, or at least having done some research about businesses in the United States or in Florida. They've looked into the immigration process. They're not coming into this very lightly because it's a big deal. And we're talking about someone who thinks, hey, I think I have enough money to make this investment. These are generally people who have been successful in business themselves at home, and now they're just ready to move it all over here. So the interest is still there. And fortunately, we almost are using to our advantage the fact that this process, when done right, takes a little bit of time. Yeah, can I turn around an E2 visa in a month? Sure. But if we take our time, we're reviewing businesses, we are making sure it's the right business, we're going to take our time. I worked with an E2 visa a couple years ago where he signed up, and I think we went back and forth on different businesses for, I want to say maybe 6 months. He'd find one, it wouldn't work. Like, all right, I'll keep looking. And then a month later, he found another one. But then from this is my business to him and his family entering the U.S. with their E2s, it was through London. So there is the 45-day thing. So notwithstanding that consulate requires 45 days to review the case. From I found this business to filing the case, I mean, it was maybe 5 or 6 weeks. We were kind of moved along really fast. So the interest is definitely still there. There are businesses to be purchased. There are still business opportunities to start from scratch. Franchises have become more popular over the last maybe year or two. There are more business brokers out there who are using franchises as an option for foreign investors, and there are more and more franchises who are into using foreign investors as there were before. Procedurally, though, U.S. consulates are closed, so most folks do apply directly with the U.S. consulate at home. They're not coming here and changing their status. Some are, and we're starting to see more of that now. Usually if they're here, I say, yeah, I'm going to want to send you through the U.S. consulate because your visa can be very powerful. Just traveling back and forth could extend the period of time you're allowed to be here in the United States. But if they can't go to a consulate to get that visa, they need to change their status while here in the U.S. So we are filing cases still with consulates for people who are still living abroad, and they're just going to have to wait until those consulates reopen to go in for their interview. If they're here, instead of saying, all right, I'm going to file all this with your home consulate, you should go back and do it there, I'm saying, well, you're here. You're going to have to change it up here, which means the next time you do leave, U.S. borders, you're still going to have to stop by a consulate to get a visa that now matches the status that you changed to the United States, because the permission to be here living and working isn't necessarily what's stamped in the passport that allows you to cross the border, because our immigration process is super simple. You can't make it easy on us. So so we have to plan for all these things, and it's much more relevant now to be mindful of that. The other thing we're starting to consider, at least I'm starting to consider it, is the consulates and CIS haven't been cool generally with telework and remote work and decentralized businesses. But now, I mean, even USCIS itself is having their officers take work home. And I'm going to be very interested to see if they're still going to be very strict on this business needs to have a physical premises where everyone comes to work and they clock in and they clock out and they have their hat and their briefcase. And maybe we're going to start seeing more and more flexibility in that, knowing that we've basically all spent the last 2-3 months working remotely. And look, and clearly, the world didn't end. We're also able to do work for the most part. So maybe we're going to start seeing more flexibility in terms of allowing remote work, allowing telecommuting, allowing employees not necessarily to be in the office all the time. Because right now they're kind of like, where are they actually all going to go to work?
Correct.
Hey, Sal, would you ever see the renewals being able to be done remotely? And so in a minute, we have to leave the country to go to the embassy
if you need
to get permission to come back.
If you need to renew your visa, yes, you would have to leave and come back. But if you're here in the US and your visa is about to expire, we have to look at your status. The I-94 number, the I-94 validity date, that's the stamp in the passport. So for people who are not familiar, the passport, as you cross the border, you get a stamp. They handwrite, I love this, they handwrite E-2, and they handwrite the date that you're allowed to stay here until. So that's your proof of status. You can get it confirmed on the Customs and Border Protection website, which is a lot, you can print it. It's not handwritten at that point. And that's your 2 years of status. An E2 visa holder, when they enter the US, they're allowed to stay here for 2 years to live and work. Now, the visa itself, which is just the permission to cross the border, that lasts for 5 years. So throughout 5 years, you can leave and come back and leave and come back for most countries, UK being one. Some are shorter. Some may only allow one entry at a time. But for the most part, 5 years back and forth. And every time you come across the border, they stamp your passport again, 2 more years. But if you can't leave to renew the visa, or you can't leave and come back to get that new stamp in your passport, then you'd have to renew your status while in the United States by filing with the Immigration Service here, with the U.S. Immigration Service versus directly at a consulate, which, by the way, the consulates are governed by the Department of State, and the USCIS is governed by Department of Homeland Security. They are different federal departments because immigration is easy.
It's so easy.
Everything.
All right, I have to ask Steve one last question before we head out because we're almost out of time. But I think it's important for people to know, you obviously come here for a reason. You came here for opportunity. But what is the one piece of advice somebody who wants to come over that you say, God, you have to do this. This is the thing I think is so important to make your journey easier. Are there one or two things that you can kind of say when we have people all over the world listening and watching?
Yeah, I think for me the biggest thing if you're going to do this is your family as you come over. I mean, one of the things that I would look to, I came over, I had a 1-year-old daughter at the time, and my wife. And what you suddenly find is that you're in a new country, you don't have those friends, you don't have that social network that you had before. There are no grandmas, there are no aunties, there's nothing. And one of the things it does is it puts pressure back on that family unit. Yeah. So I think it's making sure that the commitment to being here is something that you share as a family and not just an individual's dream. It's got to be something that both of you want before you get here, because it's that initial 12 months is difficult. You are literally starting a new life and a new business, quite often in an industry that you've not experienced before. So everything is new, and it's kind of, you're on your own with it. And I think that's probably the piece that I underestimated the most, and I was the most fortunate with. You've got to have a good partner that's coming along with you, and that makes it a lot easier to deal with.
See? All right, so that was good. You guys are amazing. That was actually great. Sal, we did our first show. Sal, the co-host with the most, Sal Picataggio.
Hey.
I got to say it with that every single time. And then, of course, our first, thank you for being our guinea pig, Steve Silcock.
Oh, my pleasure.
Cardell Real Estate. You were awesome. Great insight, guys. All right, so we'll be back. We're going to do this as a regular series. We'll have more amazing immigrant entrepreneurs on the show to tell us their journey. But thank you both. That was awesome. Fantastic show. All right. See you guys later. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks,
we'll be back around 2 o'clock, but look for more of these posts. Follow Sal and Steve on social media and see what they're up to. All right. We'll see you guys later.
Stay safe. Have fun.
Stay safe. Definitely.